Gopi Jana Falapa Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from Canto 10, chapter 69, and there are two texts, 41 and 42. So we'll be chanting text 41 together. Shij Sukho Vacham Iti Acharantam Saddharman Pavanan Griha Medinam Tammeva Sarva Geshu Shantamekam Dadashaha Shishuko Vacha Iti Acharantam Saddharman Pavanam Griha Medinam Tammeva Sarva Geshu Santamekam Dadashaha Shishuko Vacha Iti Acharantam Saddharman Pavanam Griha Medinam Tammeva Sarvageshu Shantamekam Dadashaha. Please chant. Shishuko Vacha Iti Acharantam Saddharman Pavanam Griha Medinam Tammeva Sarvageshu Santamekam Dadashaha. Shishuko Vacha Iti Acharantam Saddharman Gavanam Griha Medinam Tammeva Sarvageshu Santamekam Dadashaha. Shishuko Vacha Iti Acharantam Saddharman Pavanam Griha Medinam Tammeva Sarvageshu Santamekam Dadashaha. Thank you very much. The word for word, Shishuko Vacha. Sukadev Goswami said, Iti, thus, Acharantam, performing, Sat, spiritual, Dharma, the principles of religion, Havanam, purifying, Griha, Medinam, for householders, Tam, him, Eva, indeed, Sarva, in all, Geheshu, the palaces, Santam, present, Ekam, in one form, Dadasha, Ha? He saw. And the translation for text 41 by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada is as follows. Sukadev Goswami said, thus in every palace Narada saw the Lord in his same personal form, executing the transcendental principles of religion that purify those engaged in household affairs. And the purport by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, Sukadev Goswami repeats what the Lord has himself explained. As Srila Prabhupada writes in Krishna, meaning Krishna book, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was engaged in his so-called household affairs in order to teach people how one can sanctify one's household life, although he may be attached to the imprisonment of material existence. Actually, one is obliged to continue the terms of material existence because of household life. But the Lord, being very kind upon householders, demonstrated the path of sanctifying ordinary household life. Because Krishna, as the center of all activities, a Krishna conscious householder's life is transcendental to Vedic injunctions and is automatically sanctified, close quote. As stated in text 2 of this chapter, all the Lord's activities in the many palaces were performed by the Lord's single spiritual form. Sorry, it's a little bit small for me, so I'll leave out the two words so I don't struggle, which manifested in many places at once. This vision was revealed to Narada because of his desire to see it and the Lord's desire to show it to him. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that the other residents of Dwarka could see Krishna only in the particular part of the city they themselves occupied and not anywhere else, even if they would sometimes go to another precinct on some business. Thus, the Lord gave a special view of his pastimes to his beloved devotee Narada Muni. And then text 42. Krishnasyananta Viryasyam Yoga Maya Mahodayam Mahu Drishva Rishi Abhut Vishmito Yuta Kutukaha. And the translation for text 42. Having repeatedly seen the vast mystic display of Lord Krishna, whose power is unlimited, the sage was amazed and filled with wonder. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Karamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaita Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavan Ishvari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyas Chakripa Sindhubhya Vachapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Ramapada Swami Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Um, so the disciples of Srila Prabhupada were drawing from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. And that commentary states that here, where Srila Sukadev Goswami is speaking, it summarizes the meaning of what was already stated. So what had been stated previously by Krishna was the following. So this is Krishna talking. And here Srila Sukadev Goswami is rephrasing. So Krishna said this: I am present to teach people this Dharma. I am a householder, a Kshatriya, and you are a Brahmana. He's addressing Narada. If I do not worship you when you come to my house, then how can Dharma preached by me through proper conduct be established? So, just to teach Dharma, religious principles then become established in the world. And Krishna says, therefore I have washed your feet. So this is how he explained himself and his actions to Narada. And this wording is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's wording of Krishna speaking to Narada. And further, Krishna had said, O Brahmana, I am the speaker of religion, its performer and sanctioner. I observe religious principles to teach them to the world. My child, do not be disturbed. So that was in the Bhagavatam how it had been expressed. So now, the verse we're doing today, Sukadev Goswami is reiterating what Krishna said. So here's the restatement. Narada saw the Lord in his personal form, executing the transcendental principles of religion that purify those engaged in household affairs. So, putting it very simply. So, this necessity to teach the world the transcendental principles of religion, it becomes pertinent when one takes into account that there are three modes of nature or three ways of being in the material world that allow for a particular kind of learning in the material world. And this learning then dictates the actions that a person performs, depending upon which mode or which way of being is prominent in that personality. So when the learning that takes place is such that one performs one's actions in terms of the directions from scripture, then the actions deserve to be performed because they're based on the fundamental principles that Krishna is setting for proper action. So this kind of action is called pavriti, following scriptural injunctions. So this implies that persons who do not know scriptural directions, they become caught up in their actions and the reactions that come from the action they've performed. Whereas if one's performing one's actions according to scriptural direction, there's protection. And it's action that's, condoned. So therefore, one is protected from the reactions. So, or in fact, the reactions are minimized or everything's in order. So intelligence needs to be applied so that one can discriminate which actions to perform and which actions not to perform. So always the individual has that choice, and intelligence has to come into the picture. And Lord Krishna puts it this way: the understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, what is binding and what is liberating, is in the mode of goodness. Those were the words Krishna uses in Bhagavad Gita 18:30 to describe the person whose actions are performed according to scriptural direction. So notice there's something to fear in this material world. So he's saying the person, when they're making their judgment, how they're going to act, they actually are aware of what you should fear and what is okay. And what is actually going to free you from reaction and what is actually going to bind you to some reaction. So that particular Sanskrit I will read because it's very pertinent. Pravritim cha, mivritim cha, karya karye, baya baye, bandam moksham chaya beti, buddhi sa partha satviki. So Lord Krishna, he further clarifies, because remember, there's three ways of being for an individual. So that's somebody whose way of being is more in goodness. Now, Krishna, he's clarifying that if one's learned patterns, because we all develop patterns in the mind through our exposure to our parents, our education, the friends we keep. So, and some things even come a little bit inherited. That's a word that's sometimes used. Because you're bringing something from a previous life. So if one's learned patterns in the mind are dictated by a way of being that's very passionate, then one's intelligence can't distinguish between the action that should be done and that which should not be done. So one's intelligence can't distinguish between religion and irreligion. So this category of persons under the sway of a way of being that is more ignorant, they have learned patterns in the mind that push them in the wrong direction. So there's they have a problem if they're in this way of being that's more ignorant. They actually have this difficulty that they can't, that they're actually considering irreligion to be religion or religion to be irreligion. So Krishna does that breakdown. Now, Narada has just witnessed Lord Krishna in his personal form with one body being present in each of 16,000 palaces. So Srila Vishwanath, he points out that this was mentioned in text 2 of this chapter. So this is what text 2 says. And this is again Sukadev Goswami speaking, just like today's verse, Sukadev Goswami speaking. So Sukadev Goswami says, hearing that Lord Krishna had killed Narakasura and had alone married many brides, Narada Muni desired to see the Lord in this situation. He thought, it is quite amazing that in a single body, Lord Krishna simultaneously married 16,000 women, each in a separate palace. So that was the second text in this chapter that's been referenced here. So the sage of the demigods, Narada Muni, he very eagerly went to Dwarka. And Srila Vishwanath explains that Narada, and this was mentioned in the purport, Narada had the desire to see this phenomenon. You know, Krishna being present in 16,000 palaces with 16,000 wives. And he's still in a single body. So he was quite amazed and really wanted to see this. And because he really wanted to see the Lord in this situation, he was able to see this reality. And there's an explanation for how it's possible to see this. And Srila Prabhupada explains that Narada saw all these activities of the Lord, who's the super soul in all living beings, but who played the role of an ordinary human being, to manifest the activities of his internal potency. So those are the words of Srila Prabhupada. And that comes from the Supreme Personality, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Narada was in a position of purified devotion to Lord Krishna that permitted him to see Krishna as and this is the term that's used, as the reservoir or a kind of storage place for pleasure. That's how he saw it. There was eagerness because there's such happiness in the relationship, such pleasure derived in the relationship. So, because Narada was in a very purified state, completely in connection with Lord Krishna, he was able to actually see this. So this is, of course, in contrast to those who fall into the category of being unintelligent and foolish. These are words that Krishna uses, for whom Lord Krishna is hidden. So it's not everyone that's able to see. But Narada was in a very purified state that he was able to see this particular phenomenon. Lord Krishna explains this phenomenon. This is how Lord Krishna explains it. One should not think that I was formless and have now manifested this Satchit Ananda form as Shamasundar. My transcendental form as Shamasundar is eternal, although it remains hidden from the eyes of ordinary people due to the covering of Yoga Maya. So that's Krishna explaining what's happening. And this is from Bhagavad Gita 7.25, where Krishna explains that. So his form is eternal. And there's a danger that one might think of him as a formless being, God as formless. So here he's directly stating that his transcendental form as Shamasundar is eternal, but it's hidden from the eyes of ordinary persons due to the covering of Yoga Maya. So that's one of the energies of Krishna, his internal energy. He conceals himself for those that aren't qualified to see him, meaning they're not in a relationship of devotion with him. So the activities that Narada was seeing are described. So here's a description of what Narada was seeing. Narada saw Lord Krishna engaged in getting his sons and daughters married with suitable brides and bridegrooms in due course of time, and the marriage ceremonies, which were being performed with great pomp. In one palace, the Lord was bidding farewell to his daughter, and in another he was found receiving a daughter-in-law. Somewhere, the Lord was seen performing different types of sacrifice to satisfy the demigods, who are only his qualitative expansions. Somewhere, he was seen engaged in public welfare activities, establishing deep wells for the water supply, rest houses and gardens for unknown guests, and great monasteries and temples for saintly persons. So notice the particular public welfare activities that Lord Krishna is performing. And Srila Prabhupada points out that these are some of the duties enjoined in the Vedas for householders, for fulfillment of their material desires. Like recently, the Naperville Temple shifted from an old building that was a Baptist church into a new construction, a completely new temple building. And one had the opportunity as a householder to purchase a brick that would pave the path to the temple, and you could have your name inscribed in it. So that actually would be a householder's duty to contribute to building a temple. So this is one of the activities that Krishna was engaged in, building great monasteries and temples for saintly persons. Now, he's teaching how to act according to scriptural directions. So there's no being caught up in the actions of and reactions of work, because everything Krishna's performing is like perfectly in line with scriptural injunctions of what one's dutiful activities are, according to one's status in life. So naturally, his particular actions were on a very grand scale because he was functioning as a king. So on a royal, with all the royal protocol, but still performing the activities that go with being in a householder status. I recall reading an article that like I got exposed to the British royalty from the country I grew up in. So I'm aware, and my brother also resides in Britain. So I'm aware of the British royalty. And I recall reading that the American person who ended up marrying one of the princesses in Britain prior to her marriage, she was engaged in these kind of things, like building or being contributing to the building of wells for water supply, particularly in Africa. I recall seeing pictures. So even prior to entering the royal family, a person was engaged in some sort of welfare activities, but particularly it's the welfare activities in householder life or in the married status. So Srila Prabhupada says, how can one sanctify one's household life although one may be attached to the imprisonment of material existence? So there's a means of actually purifying your life. Because generally one's attached to having material comforts. So particularly in household life, because that's a time when one is earning or getting reimbursed for one's labor. So that reimbursement for one's labor, to purify it, that it's not just used in a selfish manner, one has to actually give charitably. So these are means for giving charitably. I have a favorite one. I like actually giving for planting of trees. So, but there are different things, and we have Lord Krishna particularly putting a focus on the building of wells. So this material life is such that every society requires some degree of intelligence to direct its affairs. So on a broader level, so we're talking, there's on the small family unit scale, the decisions one makes to direct one's affairs, utilizing intelligence. And we did a little breakdown according to one's way of being, how one will use one's intelligence and whether one's intelligence is even working properly, if one's very passionate or very ignorant. But taking it, if one's more way of being is more in goodness and one is trying to work according to scriptural directions, then one uses one's intelligence to see how one can give charitably. And in the case of a whole society, there has to be intelligence that's operating to direct the affairs of society. And there's, in civilized society, there has to be awareness, or there is awareness that the greater the intelligence that's directing the society, the more ably and efficiently the society will move towards its goals. So there have to be goals. And if the goal is to gratify the senses, meaning, one's material comforts must be attended to, that is the prime goal of the society, then the emphasis will be on increasing material knowledge so that one can increase the supply for material enjoyment. So that's how it works. So we see, like, when I was growing up, I think I didn't see a television set until I was 17 years old, because it wasn't a country that was that way inclined. It was a very simple country. And here, in the present time, if one actually goes into any store, the sheer variety of packaged goods is astounding. It's completely astounding. Like, I find I never look at any of the packaged things. I just go for the raw material because it's much simpler. It's much simpler. You can avoid yourself so much trouble. I mean, in a a grocery store, it makes shopping highly efficient if you just focus on the raw materials, because you're going to actually put those raw materials together to make an offering to Krishna. But if you're a person who's not thinking according to scriptural direction, you may be going for all the packaged things where something has been put together and, different ingredients have been put together that might please the senses, but there also may be ingredients that bring harm to the body because there's profit involved. The persons who are putting foodstuffs together are thinking profit. So, things are padded up with coloring and chemicals. Yeah. So that's just one example. Now, if the ability to see what is to be done and what is not to be done according to an absolute standard is missing in the broader societal intelligence, then enjoyment and control is the desire. So this is how it's actually what the options are. If there's not an absolute standard, then the default is enjoyment and control. And there's an example of such desire for control and the consequent actions based on material knowledge. And this is seen, particularly in the present time, as occupying world consciousness. The decisions made by the head of Russia, the Russian state, Putin. So there's a description of persons trying to understand what his course of action is leading towards. So, people are applying their intelligence, and this was a little while back, like just last year, maybe 6 months ago in 2023. So generally this is reported in a public news channel. So the British Broadcasting Corporation was reporting in this way on Putin. He's articulating how he's thinking, and this gives you an idea of where his action may be going to. And of course, the whole world is looking like, where are his actions leading to? So this is what this man says. What was the breakup of the USSR, the United Soviet Socialist Republic? It was the breakup of historical Russia. We lost 40% of our territory. Much which was accumulated over 1,000 years was lost. So you hear what he's preoccupied with. And the analysis on the part of persons who are looking at political strategies and hence trying to understand the course of action that a particular state in the world is going to take, they start seeing tens of thousands of Russian troops are deployed near Ukraine's border. There's increasing anti-Western rhetoric in Moscow. And a Russian diplomatic initiative looks more like an ultimatum to the West, all of which looks like preparations for a large-scale Russian military operation. So this was the analysis. So you can see that intelligence is being applied by the persons analyzing political strategies, where they're trying to actually see what is going to be the effect of a particular leader on the rest of the world. So this man, Putin, his desire for restating the former lands that used to belong to Russia, because notice that is his prime focus. It took the form of very brutal action. And particularly, this is where you go back to where Lord Krishna describes a way of being. So it's one man and his team of leaders. A particular strategy is employed so that he can move in the direction that is his goal, restating all the lands that used to belong to Russia. So this is the action that's chosen: bombing civilians in the cities of Ukraine. Now, there's one particularly interesting video that was put together, because journalists go into these places and they actually record so that one's literally seeing what's happening on the ground. And there was a video shown where this particular action on the part of the Russian state to try and reclaim what it views as its own land, so particularly Ukraine, and taking this action of bombing civilians in the city. There's this interesting video, should I say interesting, is actually horrific, but showing the reality. So actually, a maternity home is bombed. Then a nursery school is bombed. And then, of course, the visuals show, babies dying, little children dying, pregnant mothers with their foot blown off, just about to give birth. I mean, completely horrific. So that's action that, falls into clearly that mode of darkness and delusion, causing so much harm and distress to a whole other nation. Now, Narada, he saw other activities of Lord Krishna, going back to Narada's. Somewhere, Krishna was found as a Kshatriya king engaged in hunting animals in the forest and riding on a very beautiful Sindhi horse. And Srila Prabhupada explains it this way. According to Vedic regulations, the Kshatriyas were allowed to kill prescribed animals on certain occasions, either to maintain peace in the forest or to offer animals in a sacrificial fire. The idea being that the animal will get a higher body. So there's a reason given for this regulation for the Kshatriyas. So, I just described somebody in the present time that is in the position of a Kshatriya. It's a ruler, administrator of a particular country, and here acting more in the mode of ignorance. And here's Krishna acting according to scriptural injunctions, where a Kshatriya is permitted to go and kill an animal. And here's the reason. The Kshatriyas are allowed to practice the art of killing because they have to kill their enemies mercilessly to maintain peace in society. So that's the reason that such killing is allowed. Now, in one situation, Narada saw Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of mystic powers, and when he saw Krishna, this immediately comes to mind. Krishna is saying, by all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta and I'm the knower of the Vedas. That's what Krishna says of himself. He compiled the Vedas. He knows the Vedas. And he's situated in everyone's heart. And it is from Lord Krishna that all activities are initiated. So, you could question when you have ignorant persons performing activities that are initiated by Lord Krishna, but indeed, he's right there in the heart. And in fact, all activities that a person performs are initiated by Lord Krishna because there's prompting from the super soul within. So the living entity has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord. So even those that are not functioning in the mode of goodness, they actually are acting, being prompted by the super soul within. And the super soul generally fulfills the desires of the living entity. So, and is the witness of the work of the living entity. So there's this particular interesting statement. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he paraphrases in Bhagavad Gita 15:15 what Krishna is saying, and I found the paraphrasing quite extraordinary. So I'm going to read it, and it's pertinent to what we're discussing. Besides being the all-pervading Brahman, I am the super soul who dwells within the heart of all living entities, awarding them the fruits of their karma. And besides being the all-pervading Brahman and localized Paramatma, I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead who's known by all the Vedas. I am the compiler of Vedanta Sutra and I am the knower of the Vedas. Notice the emphasis. Compiler of Vedanta Sutra and I'm the knower of the Vedas. So, and even when he says, I'm the all-pervading Brahman, says the spiritual energy, and I'm the localized Paramatma, uh, and I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual being. And that's what Narada was seeing. And this is how it's put. Due to his inconceivable energy, he was visible in the palace of each and every individual queen. And so Lord Krishna has unlimited power. And Narada has astonishment when he sees this boundless power of Lord Krishna, because he's observing it again and again, 16,000 times. What he's observing is the demonstration of Lord Krishna's internal energy. So Srila, because Yoga Maya is arranging everything. And Srila Sanatan says that Lord Krishna was present in one body, in time and space. But by his spiritual power, he was visible in each palace. So he wasn't actually present through expanding into different forms. It's his power that allowed him to be visible in each and every palace. This is the explanation by Srila Sanatan Goswami. So that's correct. So that's the conclusion based on looking at these two verses from today. And if there's some thought to add to this, or some query, or some further comment, please feel free.
Thank you, Mataji, for your class. Seems like the main thing that stuck out for me in my mind from everything was the one word, which is the word learning. And you said Krishna performed all these in order for us to learn, or for it was something you said, but the word learning really stuck out. So it makes a lot of sense that way, that God would love us so much that he would not only send his son, but come in person, like, and show us the way. So it just was really important that that one word learning was kind of a new twist, because I was kind of trying to, like, understand, why would God do all these things when he could be like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and just come to earth and be perfect picture of saintliness. But he performed all these actions so that persons different levels would learn how to properly apply the Vedas to their life and grow to get back home, right?
Yeah. He's functioning, particularly this that Narada is seen, showing the correct actions for somebody in householder life, particularly. So particularly in the category of householder life. So and he is actually, showing perfect saintly life because generally one thinks if one were not aware of the different categories, one might think that saintly life just means complete renunciation and being in a monastery. But here it is, the Vedic teaching is that you're living a saintly life even in householder life. And Lord Krishna is demonstrating, and he's demonstrating it in 16,000 palaces through performing all the activities that would be natural for somebody in householder life, marrying your children off, welcoming a new in-law child into your home, conducting marriage ceremonies, doing charitable activities, because that's the main duty of a household, particularly the fulfilling the responsibilities of raising one's family and also executing charitable work.
And yesterday went into the kitchen and caught a little snippet of Prabhupada's lecture as it runs, and the little snippet was where he said, "This this grihastha householder life, this grihastha ashram, is not for sense gratification; it's for begetting Krishna conscious children." But he emphasized those two different things, like not for sense gratification, but for begetting Krishna conscious children.
Mm. Yes, because you're viewing your family life in a particular way. So the one option is to uh, see your children as an extension of yourself, and hence you vicariously enjoying through them. That would be one way. The other way is you seeing the child as actually belonging to Krishna, and you having a duty to actually raise that child, creating a perfect environment that they can grow in their Krishna consciousness. So hence you're training them in religious principles. So even, a child can learn to be charitable. So, yeah. Yeah, in the case of Lord Krishna, I think we discussed in one class one of the examples of the support given to his son Samba, who went about marriage through, because there were 8 kinds of marriages. He chose the particular marriage, which was one of the two that are questionable ways of going about things. And the one he chose was to go and kidnap his bride. So the support that was given was his uncle, Lord Balaram, going and trying to put it all in order and have the Kurus give Samba back and allow for the marriage to take place. And he had to use a little bit of force by trying to almost dragging the city into the Ganges, but the Kurus relented, and so um, Lord Krishna had his new daughter-in-law, Lakshmana. The marriage was performed. So, yeah.
Um, I actually originally wanted to speak on other subject matter, but since you're speaking on the topic of the family, I feel there's a lot of misconceptions or misunderstandings in regards to the Krishna conscious family. Um, if even, let's say it's a couple that gets married a little later and the wife is not able to conceive, or the fertility issue with the man, if they unify, whenever something's unified, you have a more powerful situation. So people might just think that, oh, I only got married so I can produce Krishna conscious children. But if you have two very intelligent people, kind of like what they say in the world, a power couple. Let's say these two people, and they're not trying to conceive because the gentleman, he has some fertility and the lady, whatever, cannot conceive. They can unify and help be an example of beautiful spiritual people, and the community sees this and they donate programming or enrichment to the community, but just their persona and their, how would I say, essence can help, you know, with enlightening and purifying and elevating what surrounding in the environment in their community, etc. Now, you mentioned, was it 1025 earlier? It was a scripture, it was 1025, correct?
I mentioned two different verses.
Yes.
Um,
There is a lot of material. Well, let's get to it's not expansions. So in the beginning, when we had all those expansions of Krishna, he could have chose not to expand, since in this, situation, you said he used his spiritual power to allow for one to see. Kind of, I could use the example of the Bible where, you know, Jesus walked on water, and a lot of people didn't have faith because they didn't see anything. And today they don't see those kind of activities. So, um, in the Bible it says the person that is pure in heart will see the divine. And basically, you're saying the same thing in this regard. That's why that particular individual was allowed to see, because how his desire was sincere and pure. Correct?
yes.
The other situation is that war. You were speaking of the people in the Ukraine and the Russians. You don't want to label, because today they use these cliches and they take them out of context. Everything is judging. Facts are facts. Sin is sin, regardless of what your ethnicity, what your region is. And the guy, Vladimir Putin, and even what's going on over in the Middle East, when you go in and just destroy people, the two leaders should be able to negotiate and do something. But you're saying, like in the scriptures and the Vedic scriptures, you're allowed to kill animals that are destructive, or maybe people. The United Kingdom should get together and go and do something to eliminate that individual, whether he's jailed or whatever, because it's causing havoc all over the world. But who kills a baby, or a
Yeah.
daycare center? What? That's not even a human being. That's, whatever the terminologies and religions, that's just plain demoniac. Who does that? And that is absolutely zero consciousness. When you hurt a puppy or you hurt an innocent soul, that is absolutely terrible. So, what is your idea on that? Would it be easier, instead of them, oh, we're going to kill the whole people, we're going to get, because the Israel people, the media is very dark and evil. They don't disclose everything. They went over there and you had 200 soldiers raping one woman and breaking the pelvic bone and killing and babies and babies. Um, so the thing is, it's dark on either side, but the two leaders should be able to negotiate. And the United Kingdom and the others, since they have all this power, the United Nations, I mean, they should go in and eliminate this dark, sick stuff, because it's affecting all of us. But what is your opinion about eliminating that besides this killing? I mean, maybe they should just put him in jail forever. Killing,
Yes.
because all the scriptures say thou shalt not kill, but then we're contradicting, and then we're saying it's okay. Like the soldiers, when they go to war, they kill, and sometimes the police kill. But what is your honest opinion about that?
Yes. So the question is, how should you could say, international community be responding to actions that clearly are sinful, as you put it? Indeed, sending missiles into civilian areas and targeting schools and maternity hospitals is certainly barbaric. Um, so, how the international community is responding is sending, and including the country we live in, huge amounts of funds are being sent to the Ukraine in order to be able to oppose the Russian troops. Of course, the uh, the methods being employed are outside the codes of proper warfare. And it's something that's been going on for some time, that war isn't being conducted between armies, but civilians are involved because um, they're to be found in built up areas. So the conflicts are happening in built up areas. So that's something of the nature of warfare at the present time. So, what the international community has done is try and create a corridor, a safe corridor where civilians can exit from the country under attack to a place of safety, and they have the Red Cross vehicles transporting people. And in the case of Russia, it was explained from what I gathered that they actually um, shut down, wouldn't allow for this corridor, this safe corridor for civilians to exit. So further increasing the reactions to, sinful activities that are being performed. So it's certainly from Krishna's description of, ways of being, it's a way of being that's completely in ignorance to be making decisions of this nature on a broad social scale. So one can only understand that there has to be very heavy reaction for the leaders that are making such decisions, and particularly the Russian leader and the team of people that work with him. So there's very incredible reaction, because that's the explanation of Krishna, that there's persons who are not working according to scriptural injunctions have to suffer the result of their actions. So there is going to be reaction for those people. So even if the international community hadn't been lifting a finger, there's going to be some heavy reaction for the leaders that are making those decisions that are clearly outside the codes of normal warfare.
It's just absence of God consciousness, but the media and whomever the leaders that are funding, see, there's a lot of deceit because America has always got their arm in all the way to their shoulders. Even with Pearl Harbor, they knew it was going to be bombed. They said it'll help the economy. So it's always about money and deceit. But first and foremost, many of these people, when you say ignorance, if many of these people are highly, highly educated from the finest universities, so that just shows even with our practice, because there are people in our practice that continuously read, and they get belts and initiations, and it comes down to that same old thing about the consciousness, but they don't believe in God. They're not seeing it in the earlier stages of biblical studies or the spiritual. They saw the results. And I just wish Krishna could just come down and just eliminate all that, because it is giving signals all over the world to the children, and it's eliminating innocence of the children. And then we're allowing these same people over here, they could start something here. And it seems that there are certain people from certain areas that's just in their bloodline, or it's just a part of them to do this sick, evil stuff. Who hurts babies? And, I mean, that is insane. But we're nurturing, we're giving money. It's eliminating them. Okay, let's say he's doing it because he wants that. That's greed.
Yes, that was
Overindulgence.
exactly, that was the distinction that was made, that um, if the goal of a particular social body, so a particular country, is not one that is in accord with um, an absolute principle, like a scriptural principle, then the default is greed and control. It's enjoyment and control. So that's the default position. And what has ensued and what we're witnessing is that default position of particularly control from what is understood. And I mean, this is what we're experiencing. It's our lifetime. It may seem a country that's like not next door to us, but it's affecting everybody because, um, indeed, it's behavior that's in the mode of ignorance and completely barbaric and cruel. So, yeah, that's the result of wanting control. Yeah, that is how it's explained, and you see it just acting out. I used it as an example because it's so graphic. So, yes, indeed, it's horrific. That one is actually, if you see the visuals too, it's quite, it's enough to bring tears to the eyes. There's some famous visuals done by a journalist on the ground in one of the cities. I think it was called Mariupol. It was being missiled by the Russians, and you see images of a woman has had her foot blown off and they've wheeled her into a hospital. That's not a maternity hospital because the bombing happened of a maternity hospital, and so she's giving birth with her foot blown off, and she manages to give birth. And in another case, a woman, you see her being wheeled, and clearly she's in the last stage of her pregnancy, but the missile has blown her pelvis, so naturally, both the child and she die. But at the moment when the photo's been taken, she's alive, and you see her being wheeled. So anyway, yes, it's completely horrific, and the visual images show the horror in full force. But anyway, that's was just to illustrate this particular point that if there's not an absolute principle by which the country is setting its goal, um, thinking of scriptural direction, then the default position is control and enjoyment. So yeah, I think we'll end because it's time and the article's going to start. So thank you very, very much for your kind attention. If there's anything else, you can speak in person. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.